Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Growth Focus podcast, where we bring tech experts in to talk all things tech. This episode, I'm really excited to have Ron Padzensky from NVZN, where we're going to talk about augmented reality, AR and AI, and all the things in between. So without further ado, Ron, very, very welcome to you first and foremost. And can I ask you to introduce yourself and give us a little snippet about your story, about from where you began in tech to where you are today.
Well, thank you very much for having me today, Gary. I appreciate having this opportunity. So I'm Ron Padzensky, CEO of NVZN, and my story starts with a career that was primarily in the data space. So I was a data architect, helping organizations organize their data in such a way that lended itself to be analyzed, and bringing disparate systems data together in such a way that a company can analyze their company, analyze their performance in myriad ways. So I'd been doing that for many years, and started kind of getting a little bit restless, looking around for ideas for businesses I could start. And I came up with an idea for an app. And I started researching that app, and I learned that what I wanted to do had a name, and that was augmented reality. And so I realized that there were a number of people around the world working on this problem, very much so in like university labs and defense contractors, and this was like 2012, so this was early days of the technology. I went down the rabbit hole and learned as much as I could about it, and realized that it had tremendous potential to be kind of the next human-computer interface for communications and helping us understand the world around us. So that was very intriguing to me. I saw this as something that I might want to pivot my own career into, and so to transition myself and prepare myself for that eventuality, I basically did everything I could to build my personal brand. I learned augmented reality use cases from a business perspective, and also learned as much as I could from a technical perspective about how it all works. And then around 2018, I saw companies like Amazon and IKEA and Wayfair. They were starting to use augmented reality in their e-commerce apps to help their customers visualize products in 3D at real scale in and around their homes. And I thought that's really powerful because it makes use of the technology that we already have in our hands. People don't need to go out and buy something new to have this superpower. And furthermore, these e-commerce companies were not shy about how well this was performing. They were seeing like 30 to 40% increases in e-commerce conversion rates for their customers who were engaging in those experiences. And that's really powerful. But it was only possible in native apps, right? So not only that, but it was highly technical to implement. And so you've got millions of other e-commerce sellers around the world who would benefit from this, but really couldn't take advantage of it because it's super hard to implement, number one. Number two, is only possible in native apps, and most e-commerce sellers aren't going to command installs of apps just so a shopper can have such an experience. So I realized that if this technology could be made available over the web, that would be a democratizing factor. So I got involved in an initiative under the World Wide Web Consortium to basically create APIs that would allow the sensors on a smartphone, such as the camera and the microphone and accelerometer and a number of other sensors, to communicate with the browser on the device, to have experiences that integrated these sensor activities with the browser. And so this API came out soon after that, and that was the signal that there was an opportunity to build a business making this technology available to all key e-commerce merchants.
Absolutely. That's a fascinating story of how you got that. Thank you for sharing that with us. Because so you've talked about your inspiration, what inspired you. You can see other companies, but it was mostly the big enterprises that were utilizing AR, and there was a big market out there. And I think that's always an inspiration for an entrepreneur when they can see a gap in a marketplace that isn't or cannot yet be utilized, and where they can actually use software, new technology, in this case AR, for their engagement rates. And could you talk us through a case study where AR has significantly improved a company's engagement rates or helped them in their client acquisition process?
Sure. Yeah. So, the first thing we did was build an MVP, or a minimally viable product, to test with an actual seller. With the help of my son, who's a software engineer, we built this MVP, and I was introduced through a friend, to a merchant based in England who sells a very unique product called tree tents. The company is called Tentsile, and so they make this product that is a tent that's suspended above ground between three cables or straps. It comes in many different sizes and different feature sets and so forth. And so here you have a product that people aren't innately familiar with. It's a new product. It's not something you encounter very often, number one. And number two, it has a very strong relationship to scale. Like, understanding the size of that's very important to knowing which one is going to be right for you to purchase. And then the other factor is these are very expensive, and they're large, and perhaps something that someone would be loath to have to go through the return process if they got it, set it up, and didn't like it. So those are the three main factors that we've learned govern the viability of virtual product previews for merchants. So we worked with this company to create 3D models of their products and then integrate those into virtual product preview experiences, placing a call to action button on each of the product pages for their products that would then open the camera on their phone and allow the shopper to view that tent, that tree tent, at real scale in 3D, and get a sense of the size, be able to walk around it like it's really there, even poke your head inside and get a sense from inside the 3D model of what it looks like inside and what it would be like to be inside. So, super powerful experience, but, we measured their success with their shoppers. And sure enough, we were seeing the same kind of performance that Amazon and IKEA had been reporting, and that's that shoppers who engaged in the experience were about 30 to 40% more likely to make the purchase than those who did not. So that was the signal that we could do this. We could make this work. We could help merchants improve their conversion rates and make it engaging and interesting and exciting and fun for the shopper to engage in on the journey.
That's absolutely fascinating. And I think there's, again, you mentioned something there, and I always like to go back to something in case something was missed. It's not just a purchasing decision. It's the worry about the return. It's the worry about what happens if I buy this and it gets all the way to me, especially me being up here in the mountains. It takes 4 or 5 days for anything to get here, and then it's another 4 or 5 days for anything to get, an RA back or something. So it can be, especially if it's bulky. So that's a really, really good point as well, and I can see how that can help businesses and merchants. That being said, then, what do you think are the most common misconceptions businesses have about implementing AR into their marketing strategies?
So what we see is some skepticism that it's going to be effective. I think a lot of, we're targeting the middle market. We operate on e-commerce platforms like Shopify and WooCommerce, whereas it's very much the middle market. So these aren't companies doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year in sales. They're maybe somewhere between 500,000 and 50 million. And so they have to be very judicious about how they invest their money in their e-commerce efforts. And so we see some skepticism about whether their customers will use it, and whether they'll see a return on investment. So, in addition to measuring ROI with our initial client, as I told the story about a moment ago, we've continued to measure this with other clients, and continually over and over again are seeing the same similar results, about 30 to 40%. So it's, our challenge is how can we convince this smaller enterprise, often, individual entrepreneurs who have started their own store on Shopify, how can we convince them that this is going to benefit them and their customers? So that's been one of our biggest challenges. So certainly, we share data with them. Number two, we give them free trials, like try it out, measure the performance. If you don't feel it's benefiting you, there's really nothing to lose.
So it's really a case of, needing to educate these businesses. It's a new thing that's coming out. They can see the big enterprises using them. They can't quite see how they can actually utilize it yet. So every business works on an ROI. How do you measure, in your opinion, ROI of AR implementation for a business? And what do you think is the most important metrics that these businesses should be focused on when it comes to implementing AR?
Right. So typically what we do in our customer tests is we do A/B testing. So some visitors to the site are able to see the feature and some are not. And then it's a simple, there's a number of metrics that can be tracked in both the A/B test. It's certainly, number of visitors who engage in the experience. It's time on site. So how much more time are those visitors spending on using the feature versus those who are not using the feature? Which is very important because shoppers have a limited amount of time to do their shopping. And the more time they're spending on your site, interacting with your site, it's less time than they're going to go spend perhaps looking at your competitor site to compare products and prices and so forth. And then, of course, the conversion rate. So of those who are engaging in the experience, what's the likelihood that they are actually going to pull the trigger on the purchase? Okay.
Yeah, great. Yeah, absolutely. Because they need to measure what they're doing and making sure that they are getting a decent ROI out of it. And the more that they can see and the more they can measure, even if it's little baby steps, is a step beyond from where they actually were by utilizing it. So AI is fascinating. Just like AI is literally on this curve at the moment. Is that it doesn't matter who you talk to, where you talk to them, anywhere in tech or outside of tech, AI is a big conversation. But when it comes to AR technology, what do you believe will have the biggest impact on business growth in the next 3 to 5 years as AR continues to grow?
Right. So actually, I think the answer to that question is actually intertwined with AI. So AR, AI.
Let's go for it. It saves me asking another question.
Yeah. So perhaps the greatest friction point in enabling our technology for a merchant is the creation of 3D models of their product. So having a highly accurate, highly photorealistic 3D model of a product is super important because no merchant or manufacturer wants to have their product represented poorly or inaccurately because that's a huge turnoff to a shopper if they bought something based on the appearance they're seeing while engaged in the experience and then they get it and they receive the product and it looks very different, then that's a big disappointment for the shopper. It may end up in expensive returns for the seller. So accurate 3D models are super important. And today that requires a highly technically skilled resource to create those 3D models that are exactly to scale and have they reflect light in a realistic way. Think about a sofa, which is usually a very light absorbing fabric. You wouldn't want that to appear like highly reflective in a 3D model. So it's very important to get the textures right for the products and so forth. So today that's a labor-intensive process, which translates into cost for the merchant to have those models created. So this is where AI comes in. So increasingly, AI is being applied to the problem of 3D model creation. Today, it's not quite there yet. It can create, based on feeding photographs to AI models that are obviously tuned to create 3D models. It gets us about 80% of the way there. So it's reducing the amount of hands-on modeling time by our technicians, because it's creating the basic structure, and then our technician can go in there and fix it up, pretty it up, make it photorealistic, and so forth. So it's already saving us time in our 3D model creation. Now, what's really going to allow augmented reality to take off for e-commerce is the ability to quickly and accurately and inexpensively generate these 3D models on demand, on the fly, and allow us to offer this as a self-service feature of our software that when they are enabling their products for their site by just being able to upload some 2D images and have it spit out a super accurate 3D model. That's kind of the holy grail of my business, and we see that day coming. I mean, it's the progress being made on this. It's moving pretty fast.
So at the moment, it's currently being predominantly, as you said, in e-commerce or whatnot. Where do you think? What other industries do you think could be using AR in their business and in their marketing strategies that they're not using yet, or they haven't even thought of using AR in their marketing? What other industries do you think could be utilized?
Well, I think this is a good opportunity to kind of talk about what's going on in AR hardware space. So recently, Apple made a big wave with their release of their Vision Pro headset, which looks like a pair of ski goggles that can enable both AR and VR and hybrid experiences. You've got Meta, which has a much lower cost version of that. That's in some ways even better than Apple's product, in other ways less so. You've got also another Meta product is their Ray-Bans, which today don't provide the same type of visuals as the Meta Quest headset, but is able to use artificial intelligence to understand a context using cameras on a pair of glasses that look like bulky Ray-Bans. Not only can they take pictures, but it can do things like augment what the user is looking at in ways like translating a foreign language for a traveler. And so there's way too many use cases to enumerate in this conversation, but that's a great use case of augmented reality that goes beyond e-commerce for sure. Of course, gaming is a great use case for AR, entertaining marketing experiences that are perhaps more ephemeral than the types of experiences we generate for our e-commerce customers.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating time, and there isn't a day go by where I'm not seeing some kind of new AR product come on the market. I think the latest one I saw was a pair of glasses that not only allowed you to see through, so you can actually see what's in front of you, but there was AR augmentation inside as to what I'm looking at and maybe a use for it as well. So from outside in, people can still see your eyes. You could still look out of it as a proper pair of glasses. But there was the augmentation reality on the inside. So yeah, it's a fascinating place to be in and watch, and it's a fascinating into the future of where it's actually going to be. So going from the future, I want to come back just a little bit from that. As an entrepreneur in the AR space, what challenges have you had to face as an entrepreneur, and how did you overcome them? If you can give us a couple of examples of that.
Yeah, so I would say that getting investment has been one of our biggest challenges, and there's a number of reasons for that. There's, one reason is that I am a first-time entrepreneur, right? I come from a corporate world, and especially at this point in my career, I think some investors might not necessarily perceive me as somebody who can be coached into being a successful entrepreneur. So one of the things we face is skepticism from investors, not only about my team's ability to execute on this, but also it's an early market, and there's just not a lot of investors who understand that market, and investors tend to invest in what they understand. And then along that same line of challenge in investment, right now, artificial intelligence is sucking at least 40%, if not more, of all the venture capital out of the market. So it's kind of the shiny new toy. Before that, you had money being invested into NFTs and stuff like that. So there's these trends that VCs are chasing, and AR has yet to have its day in the sun like some of these other technologies we're seeing today.
That is a really good way of putting it, actually. Have its day in the sun, because, as you say, VCs are very much like children. They chase the newest, shiniest toy, and what they were playing with before, they're very easy discarded for the next trendiest thing. My friend's using it, so my friend's got this toy, I need to play with this toy, and that's effectively how a lot of VCs are working. And as you said, there is a tremendous journey available for AR. They just need to get on the bandwagon. People just need to see what it can do and the benefits it can do in the enterprise world and the SMB world. And that's when we'll see more and more of the VCs jumping in and investments jumping in. So that being said, that actually leads me quite nicely into this next question. What advice, Ron, would you give to tech entrepreneurs looking to enter into this new AR market or incorporate AR into their existing product or service? What advice would you be giving to these guys?
Yes. So I would say be prepared to be patient, and the media is full of success stories about people whose startups got funded based on a sketch on a napkin during a conversation in a bar with a venture capitalist. Those are great stories. They're, that makes for great journalism. But the reality is that getting a startup funded can be a long and arduous road, and be prepared for that, because the media does not write about the 90-some% of startups that fail. They just don't. The spectacular failures we see that being written about.
Yeah.
But mostly they want to report the success stories, and you see these 20-year-olds who are getting millions of dollars in funding for their idea, and that's wonderful that happens, but that's not reality. That's not really how this space works. And so don't go into the process with expectations of such overnight success and easy success.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's that we always see those who not necessarily made an overnight success, but they're at the very top of their game. They are successful, and yet no one really sees the journey about it, because the press doesn't talk about the journey. Social media doesn't talk about the journey. They just want to talk about the shiny glorification of, and in this world of instant gratification, there's no gratification in the journey. There's only gratification in the end product. This is what happens, right? But as you said, the failure rate of businesses is huge, and no one wants to talk about that. We might see a tremendous fall from grace, where they rose too quickly, like Icarus, and then fell to earth. But we don't really see the baseline of people. And one of the insights that I have certainly learned from interviewing tech leaders such as yourself and others is that it's okay to change course. It's okay that if this route isn't suiting you, to go a different route, but keep focused, be patient, put the work in, and you'll get there. And as you say, stop expecting an overnight success. Success will come, eventually, if you keep pushing and stuff. I think that's a great piece of advice, from you, Ron, and thank you for sharing that. And that's a really nice place to come to this bit of a loaded question as we come to the end of our interview. And thank you very much so far, Ron, for sharing the insights you've given us. It's been really, really insightful. I always like to ask a loaded question to my guests for the people. So my question to you would be this. Having been through corporate America, started your own business, faced the challenges, overcome those challenges to where you are today, and knowing full well that the mission you're on and the vision that you have is strong and clear, what piece of advice would you give your younger self to get to where you are today, or to build success?
Yes. So at my age, to age myself a bit, when I was contemplating a college major and trying to figure out the direction that I wanted to take as an 18-year-old, computer science really, it was certainly there, but it was not, it was kind of a niche thing. It was very nerdy. I didn't have any frame of context because I didn't know anybody who was a computer scientist, or none of my peers in my immediate age group did I know who were following that track. So the world has changed so much since then. And, being a computer scientist or a software engineer just opens up so many opportunities today that when I was a student, we had no visibility into that. At that age, I think I thought of computers as something you feed punch cards into, and that just sounded so abstract and nerdy. Obviously that's changed so much. So I would tell my younger self to get a degree in computer science. And you know what? Even today, it's less necessary for success than ever that you get a college degree in computer science in order to be successful. So there are other routes to being a skilled programmer and to earning a great living in the technology space without necessarily going to school. So that's important. But that said, I do strongly believe that the college experience, the university experience, is also very important to one's growth and to building a network and just giving yourself a chance to grow up and become independent.
Yeah, thank you very much, Larry. Nice piece of advice, definitely, as well. So how can people get hold of you? If people want to get hold of you to learn more about what you do, Ron, or more about AR, what's the best way of getting hold of you?
Yeah, so our website is nvzn.net. Of course, I am available to be emailed at rpadzensky at nvzn.net. nvzn.net.
And I'll make sure I'll put your contact details down in at the bottom in the show notes as well, so people, if they want to get hold of you, they can get hold of you. Well, Ron, thank you very much for your time. I obviously can't believe how quickly time has gone again. Thank you for sharing those insights. Some really, really good stuff there for that. Thank you very much for your time, for joining us today.
Gary, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed our conversation.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And guys, it has been an absolute pleasure having you with us on this episode as well. So if you have taken anything out from this, or you have picked up some 1 or 2 or 5 great nuggets from Ron, please do one of 4 or all 4 things, which is to make sure you comment, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and more importantly, make sure you share so that other people within our great industry of tech can grow and succeed as well. So until our next episode, I bid you goodbye. I wish you all the best, and I shall see you all soon.